can start with the question around, what led you to a coaching journey? Because it didn't kind of just...
No, I wasn't planning it.
No.
And what I love about Olga's story there is her explaining what crisis was for her in her life, because I guess it was crisis that brought me to the coaching, but from a very different perspective. I was working in corporate events. I had a corporate events company in the mountains. It was great. I'd done it for 20 years and I loved it. Passionate skier, loved where I was living. I had a young child. Olga, there's a kind of a crossover there. I think that maybe can be a crisis crossover that shifted everything. Just a quick drink in my mouth. And I think there were so many elements, and I think I'll mention a few because I'm sure they'll resonate. Yeah, that questioning of, is this job still where I want to be? Something about it was feeling hollow, that I wanted to change. I didn't know how to and who I would be if I didn't do that anymore. That it was really being demanding in a way that I didn't feel I could fulfill from a motherhood role. I was having to travel a lot, spend time away, and that was super stressful. And obviously there was obviously at the time there was a global economic crisis. I was trying to renovate a house, so an added element. But the thing I think that really connected me, Daniel, with what you're talking about is this body awareness. Is I started to become aware of anger, of actually a lot of people around me being angry at me. And it suddenly hit me that it was something to do with me. And you're like, well, how am I showing up that brings this? And I didn't know how to explore that. And my first exploration actually was through somatic experiencing. So becoming more aware of my body and noticing what showed up in my body in various different situations. And it was just extraordinary, the difference or capacity that allowed me to be with myself and explore myself. So I think that was almost the first step of, okay, I'm in crisis, really feeling like I just have to get through the next day and the next day and the next day. And at some stage I'll come out of it. To actually, there's a way here that I can be with this. And I'd moved away from Chamonix for a while, and I'd come back and I was like, how do I carry on this journey? And I looked up somatics and, body work things, and the Center for Coaching came up in Geneva. I was like, that's kind of close. And it was before COVID. So it was like in-person stuff. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. Looked at the syllabus and so many of the elements that the course is built on. So from a philosophical point of view, to the body experience and the bringing in not just the head, but the actions and the feelings, it just, really resonated with me. So there I was, had a conversation with Michelle actually, and signed up, and very swiftly it went from in-person to online as COVID struck. But it was absolutely inviting me into the skills of being able to be aware of myself, which I don't think I'd had any real capacity to do previous to sort of signing up. I started to be aware that it was something to do with me, but I didn't know how to explore that. And to start to introduce possible practices, things that I did every day that could bring me into a state of, I'd say, less crisis and moving somewhere. I'm not sure exactly how confidence, if confidence is the right word for me, but it was definitely not feeling in crisis anymore.
And what did you learn, Hannah, about yourself around, because you were saying you suddenly became aware that other people were behaving in certain ways, and you hadn't kind of noticed perhaps what was catalyzing that or generating. So what did you learn about yourself as you were?
I think from that particular example, Daniel, it was interesting going from a point of, what the hell is their problem, right? To like, oh, there's like a pattern here and I'm like the center of it. And it's not happening to other people that are standing next to me. And so I think the first learning was, what's my role in my life?
Yes.
And how much through my noticing can I change that? And then it was like, well, how do you do that? How do you start to reflect on yourself and notice? And I think that was just the groundbreaking experience of being on CFD was, these are some tools that I can start to explore myself. And yeah, the learnings, or actually the freedom and choice of having different ways to show up was, it felt like, yeah, coming up for air, like, oh my God, there's different place to go with this.
Yes. And what I love about what you're saying is that I don't know how to deal with this. And there is a way that you can approach it. There's a structure, there's a methodology, there's an approach that can help you triangulate for you. Like you were saying, this is what's happening around me. How do I become more aware of what is generating that pattern, which is now becoming something that I would like to deal with?
Sure.
And that's that kind of the insight of saying, yes, it's how do we do that in a way which is sufficiently structured, but yet sufficiently open that it can enable all of us, with all the wealth of things that we bring, to be able to pinpoint what that kind of, as you said, to where's this coming from. But then, of course, that isn't enough, right? And again, we come to the point of saying, well, then, so what did you do? What practices did you then identify or work with, which enabled you to navigate crises?
Sure. Interesting again that Olga was like, I'm not meditating. I mean, someone had suggested to me to meditate, and it wasn't something I'd thought really about before. And that's a practice that I do every day. Still, I've probably been meditating now for about 7 years. And it can vary, from, an ideal meditation time for me is about 40 minutes a day, but it can be one conscious breath. It's like, I don't go to bed without really consciously thinking about, where am I and how is my body, what's showing up for me, and giving myself time to be aware. And I think that's where the somatics comes in, is that when I can start to notice my nervous system, my thoughts, my sensations, it gives me another truth, maybe, that cognitively we so often think that we're thinking what's right. And that can be related to others as well. We think we know what's right for them too. But actually, by noticing myself, I'm very particularly kind of sensations and emotions through my body, it just gave me a different way of orientating that felt very much more authentic and valid for me.
I love what you're saying, Hannah, about that, how we can sometimes, if we're locked in too much, we can see the truth, which is the truth for us. And then we, as you pause, even if it's, as you said, just a breath, it's about then recognizing that this is a truth at this point for me, perhaps, and what is the truth that I'm projecting on others, and what might be other possible truths that are there. And how do I start to become aware of that and open the way that I'm seeing the world by just, again, as Olga was saying as well, that slowing down in a way that works for you, to be able to see something that was not possible to see before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, that's it. It's that we're all different. And so there's no one way fits all. And having the kind of invitation to start exploring things that do work for you, or committing to a practice that does allow you to see yourself and others from a different perspective. I mean, that is a practice in itself, just open curiosity every day, to myself, to other people. We talk about the world at the moment of being in crisis, but there's also a curiosity as to, well, how do we respond to that? We don't necessarily have to respond from a place of crisis if we have these practices in place that allow us to explore how it feels for us.
And that always, I keep coming back to Viktor Frankl's thing of saying, the between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that
Mm,
space lies our growth and our freedom. And if we
mm,
can find that infinitesimal space just
mm.
there, we have choice, no
Yeah,
matter what's going on and no matter how dire the circumstances are. And yet sometimes it is, well, sometimes, often it is so hard to just be able to lift our head enough when we are in the middle of the maelstrom of what's going on around us to be able to notice I do have a space, a tiny space in which I can pivot and do something slightly different from what my normal pattern of behavior is. Yeah. So that, wow. Yeah, no, that's
yeah. And that brings that sort of sensation out of crisis.
exactly.
So it's like, yeah, I'm noticing that space that's available to me that otherwise I wouldn't have noticed. And so from a nervous system point of view, you are acting, thinking, feeling from a whole different place.
Exactly. And there's something else, Hannah, that you pointed to, which I think is very important for all of us to consider. Notice that you said your meditation practice, you've been doing it every day for the last 7 years. And that points to the element which is around consistency and discipline in those practices you were both talking about. Whatever we commit to is ensuring that we do it, no matter how tiny, that we commit to doing it consistently, and out of that things will emerge and grow, but without that, change is difficult to enact or enable. So that's
Yeah,
another layer which enables us to be able to reach to what we are yearning for, that change that will happen over time.
sure.
Yeah.